We hear their smooth voices on the radio, but behind the scenes, some R&B stars are a total nightmare. Their demands are legendary, their egos are huge, and their tempers are short. People who worked with them have stories to tell. We're about to expose the 20 R&B legends who were secretly impossible to work with, including one star whose demands included rebuilding an entire dressing room. 1. Mariah Carey. When you have a voice that spans 5 octaves, you get a reputation. Mariah Carey isn't just the Queen of Christmas. To many in the music industry, she's the undisputed Queen of Divas. Her talent is unbelievable, but her behind-the-scenes behavior is the stuff of legend. You see, working with Mariah means working on her schedule, and her schedule is, well, let's just say she's not a morning person. Reports from video sets and photo shoots are all the same. She often shows up 4, 6, or even 8 hours late with a huge entourage. The entire crew, who have been there since sunrise, just has to wait. And when she arrives, the demands begin. Her contract writers, which are the lists of requests an artist has for their dressing room, are famous. There are rumors that she has asked for things like 20 white kittens and 100 white doves. While that might be an exaggeration, her real requests are just as wild. She often demands a specific, expensive brand of bottled water to wash her hair with. She has reportedly asked for all white dressing rooms with white roses, white curtains, and white couches. To put it mildly, if it's not perfect, she's not happy. For producers and directors, she is one of the most difficult and expensive stars to manage. But while Mariah's demands were about her own comfort, our next star's difficult behavior came from a place of pure creative chaos. 2. Kanye West. Kanye West, or Ye as he's called now, is a certified genius. He changed the sound of hip-hop and R&B forever. But the thing nobody tells you is that his genius is a storm, and it's exhausting to be in. What many overlooked in his early days was that his drive for perfection made him a nightmare in the studio. He is never satisfied, and he will push his collaborators to their breaking point. Take his album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. He flew dozens of producers, writers, and artists to Hawaii and basically made them live in the studio 24/7. He would make people work on a single sound for 12 hours, only to delete it. He's famous for making artists re-record a single line hundreds of times. Even his friends get the treatment. During the Watch the Throne album, his partner Jay-Z got so fed up with Kanye's endless tweaking that they started working in separate rooms. His ego also means he can't stand being one-upped. He has publicly interrupted award speeches and gone on long rants, making every collaborator and even his record label nervous about what he'll do next. He is brilliant, but working with him means giving up your life and your sanity. For his art, Kanye's ego made him a creative storm, but our next star's difficulties were far more tragic, stemming from a dark personal battle that overshadowed her incredible voice. 3. Whitney Houston. This one is tough because Whitney Houston was, and still is, beloved. She was called the Voice. In the 80s and 90s, she was the golden girl of R&B and pop. She was professional, she was stunning, and her talent was unmatched. But in the 2000s, things took a tragic turn. Her personal life, marked by a difficult marriage and a battle with powerful substances, began to unravel, and it had a huge effect on her work. By the 2000s, the Whitney who showed up to the studio was not the same person. Producers who had worked with her for years were heartbroken. She would be days late for sessions or not show up at all. When she did arrive, her voice, damaged by her lifestyle, was not what it used to be. She would get frustrated and have emotional outbursts. Believe it or not, for her 2009 comeback album, I Look to You, producers had a massive challenge. It's reported that they had to spend countless hours piecing together her vocals, line by line, and sometimes even word by word, just to get a usable take. It was a long and painful process for everyone involved. They all loved her, but working with her became a sad and frustrating experience. Whitney's battles were a tragedy. But our next artist's difficult reputation isn't tragic. It's terrifying, built on a foundation of total control and dark accusations. 4. R. Kelly. Before a storm of legal troubles and heinous accusations completely destroyed his career, R. Kelly was the undisputed king of R&B. He didn't just have hits, he was the hit maker. He wrote and produced smashes for Michael Jackson, Celine Dion, and many others. But working with R. Kelly was a dark and difficult experience. He was known as a total control freak. When he took on a new artist to produce, he didn't just write their songs, he controlled their entire life. Just look at his work with the young singer Aaliyah. He wrote her songs, produced her music, and crafted her entire image. But reports from that time say he was a puppet master. Collaborators said you weren't allowed to talk to her directly. He controlled everything. His studio, known as the Chocolate Factory, was his kingdom. Insiders reported that he would make artists and engineers work for days on end, sometimes locking them in the studio until a track was perfect. He was known for his bad temper and his demanding nature. Long before his public downfall, he had a reputation in the industry as a brilliant but deeply troubling and manipulative person. To be around, working with R. Kelly meant entering a dark and controlling world. But our next star's bad behavior was less about control and more about old-fashioned, superstar-level partying and unprofessionalism. 5. Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown was the original bad boy of R&B. He started in the clean-cut boy band New Edition, but it was clear from the beginning that he was the problem child. While the other members, like Ralph Tresvant and Michael Bivins, were focused on sharp dance moves and smooth harmonies, Bobby was all about himself. And get this, he would intentionally mess up the choreography on stage or sing his parts louder than everyone else, just to steal the spotlight. This, as you can imagine, made the other guys furious. He was late for rehearsals, arrogant, and had a reputation for wild partying. To put it mildly, his behavior was so bad that the group literally voted him out in 1985. He then launched a solo career with the album Don't Be Cruel. And it exploded. He became one of the biggest stars on the planet. But his success only made his unprofessionalism worse. He would show up to his own concerts hours late, or sometimes not at all, leaving thousands of fans waiting. He was a nightmare for tour managers and record executives. His talent was huge, but his ego and chaotic lifestyle were even bigger. Bobby's attitude tore his group apart. But our next star, the queen of hip-hop soul, had a reputation for being so volatile that producers were almost scared of her. 6. Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige is the queen of hip-hop soul for a reason. Her music is raw, honest, and full of pain. She sings about her struggles, and that's why millions of people love her. But in her early career, that keeping it real attitude made her incredibly difficult to work with. When she first came out with her album, What's the 411, she was a young woman from a tough background, and she didn't trust anyone. She was famously managed by Sean Puffy Combs, and their studio sessions were legendary for being volatile. Mary was known for her dramatic mood swings. One minute she would be fine, and the next she would be having a massive emotional outburst. Producers and writers had to walk on eggshells around her. She would argue about song lyrics, about the beat, about everything. She was fighting her own personal demons, and she brought all of that anger and pain into the studio. It made for amazing music, but it was a taxing and stressful environment for everyone on her team. She has since mellowed out and become a respected icon, but back in the 90s, working with Mary was a real emotional roller coaster. Mary's volatility came from a place of pain. But our next artist was just plain demanding, a studio tyrant who ruled his sound with an iron fist. 7. Keith Sweat. Keith Sweat was one of the founding fathers of the new Jack Swing sound that took over R&B in the late 80s and early 90s. He had a string of hits like I Want Her, and Make It Last Forever. He had a very specific whining vocal style and a particular sound, and he was not willing to change it for anyone. While he often worked with other producers, like the legendary Teddy Riley, Keith was known for being a demanding and difficult collaborator. He wasn't just the singer, he was the boss. He would clash with songwriters over lyrics and with producers over the smallest details in the beat. He had a vision for his music, and he would not compromise. This meant long, frustrating nights in the studio, redoing tracks over and over until Keith was happy. He was a perfectionist, but not in a way that inspired people. He was seen as stubborn and overbearing. If you were a songwriter who brought him a song, he would often rewrite large parts of it and demand a writing credit. He knew what he wanted, and he didn't care whose toes he stepped on to get it. Keith's demanding nature was all about the final product, but our next star's overbearing style was aimed at his own bandmates, including his own family. 8. Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert had one of the most powerful and soulful voices in R&B history. As the son of a music legend, Eddie Levert of the O'Jays, he had a lot to prove. He formed the group Levert with his brother Sean and a friend, Mark Gordon. They had huge hits, but behind the scenes, Gerald was the undisputed and often overbearing leader. Gerald was a workaholic. He lived and breathed music, and he expected everyone around him to have that same level of dedication. He pushed his bandmates, especially his brother, relentlessly. It was tough love, but many times it went too far. In the studio, Gerald was the boss. He wrote most of the songs, he arranged the vocals, and he told everyone else what to do. This caused a lot of friction in the group. They felt less like partners and more like his employees. He was also a demanding producer for other artists he worked with, like the O'Jays themselves. His father even said that working with his son in the studio was one of the hardest things he ever had to do. He was a genius, but his overbearing nature made him a difficult man to work for. Gerald's intensity was focused on his inner circle, but our next artist's difficult behavior reportedly exploded only after he had one of the biggest hits of the decade. 9. Montel Jordan. This Is How We Do It. That song was everywhere in 1995. It was a massive #1 hit that made Montel Jordan a household name. He was a tall, handsome, and smooth singer who seemed to have it all. But the thing is, sudden fame can change a person. And according to people in the industry, the success went straight to his head. After This Is How We Do It, Montel reportedly became a classic diva. The rumors started swirling about his behavior on the sets of his music videos. He was late, he was demanding, and he was hard on the crew. He wanted everything to be bigger and better, and he wasn't nice about it. He clashed with his record label, Def Jam, over his image and the direction of his music. He wanted to be seen as a serious R&B artist, not just a one-hit wonder party singer. This created a lot of tension. While he had other hits, he never matched the success of his first song. Many whisper that his difficult attitude and diva antics made executives less willing to fight for him. Montel's alleged diva behavior came after his big hit. But our next star's tour drama and backstage fights were a constant problem, even when he was at the top. 10. Ginuwine. Ginuwine was one of the biggest R&B heartthrobs of the late 90s. With his smooth voice, incredible dance moves, and hit songs like Pony, he was a superstar. He was part of the Super Friends crew, working closely with Missy Elliott and Timbaland, who produced his best work. But while he was smooth on stage, he was rumored to be a handful behind the scenes. The pressure of being a top-tier performer is intense, and for Ginuwine, that pressure sometimes boiled over. There were constant rumors of drama on his tours. He was known for being moody and difficult with his road crew and his backup dancers. What many overlooked was the tension within his own creative team. As Ginuwine got more famous, his ego grew. He started to feel that he didn't need his original team as much. This led to clashes with Timbaland, who was the architect of his sound. Eventually, their creative partnership fell apart, and many say Ginuwine's music was never the same. He was a massive talent, but his difficult attitude pushed away the very people who helped make him a star. Ginuwine's ego caused a rift with his producer. But our next star's ego didn't just cause a rift, it blew up his entire group on live radio. 11. Sisqó. In the late 90s, the R&B group Dru Hill was on top of the world. They had 4 members, and their lead singer, Sisqó, had a powerful voice and unmistakable shock of blonde hair. They had hit after hit like In My Bed and How Deep Is Your Love. But it was clear that Sisqó thought he was the real star. His ego began to grow out of control. He felt that he was bigger than the group. This all came to a head in 1999 during a live interview on a radio station. To promote their new album, the group was supposed to debut a new song. But instead, Sisqó grabbed the mic and announced he was leaving to do a solo album. The other members were stunned. It was a total betrayal. Believe it or not, one of the other members, Woody, was so upset he reportedly left the studio, went to a nearby church, and just started singing gospel music. Sisqó, of course, went on to release Thong Song, a ridiculous and massive hit that made him a global, albeit temporary, superstar. His ego didn't just make him difficult, it made him destroy his own band in the most public way possible. Sisqó's ego was legendary, but our next artist's difficult behavior was less about ego and more about a dark and chaotic energy that made him completely unpredictable. 12. DMX. DMX was one of the most raw and powerful forces in music history. He wasn't really R&B, but his soulful, painful songs blurred the lines, and he collaborated with many R&B stars. His energy was what made him a star, but it was also what made him a nightmare to work with. DMX was a man battling serious, personal demons, including a powerful substance habit. This made him completely unpredictable. You never knew which DMX you were going to get. Would it be the passionate artist or the chaotic, angry man? He would show up to studio sessions and be unable to record. He would get into arguments and fights with engineers and producers. Working on his music videos was just as hard. He was famous for showing up hours late or just disappearing for days at a time. This cost record labels hundreds of thousands of dollars. His label, Rough Riders, had to hire people just to try and keep track of him. He was a brilliant, one-of-a-kind artist, but his erratic behavior and inner turmoil made every project with him a massive gamble. DMX's inner battles made him unpredictable, but our next star's difficult nature was all about his external battles, specifically his public feuds that made him toxic to work with. 13. Ja Rule. In the early 2000s, you couldn't turn on the radio without hearing Ja Rule. He and his producer, Irv Gotti, had a complete lockdown on the charts with their brand of thug-lovin' R&B. He had hit duets with Ashanti, Jennifer Lopez, and Christina Milian. He was on top of the world, and then he picked a fight with 50 Cent. This wasn't just a rap beef, it became an all-out war that poisoned everything Ja Rule touched. The thing is, 50 Cent was not just a rapper. He was a master at destroying careers. He relentlessly attacked Ja Rule, and the public turned on Ja. This made Ja Rule toxic to work with. R&B singers who had previously lined up to do a song with him were now scared to. Why? Because working with Ja Rule meant you were now an enemy of 50 Cent and his powerful G-Unit crew. 50 Cent would publicly attack anyone who associated with Ja. Suddenly, Ja Rule's phone stopped ringing. His feuds and his angry public responses made him a liability, and his career as a hitmaker came to a crashing halt. Ja Rule's feuds made him toxic. But our next artist's bad attitude and diva behavior had nothing to do with feuds. It was just who she was. 14. Foxy Brown. Foxy Brown, alongside Lil Kim, broke down barriers for women in hip-hop. Her debut album, Il Na Na, was a massive hit and was full of R&B-infused tracks. She had a unique voice and a ton of charisma. She also had, to put it mildly, a legendary bad attitude. From early in her career, Foxy got a reputation for being incredibly difficult. She was known for clashing with producers in the studio, arguing over beats and lyrics. But her worst behavior was on the road. She became famous for canceling shows at the last minute, leaving promoters and fans furious. She also had a very short temper. There are numerous reports of her having heated, screaming arguments with hotel staff, airline employees, and her own management team. This behavior eventually led to legal troubles. She was hard on her collaborators and hard on her staff. Her talent was undeniable, but her volatile personality made her one of the most difficult artists of her time. Foxy's short temper was famous, but her rival, Lil Kim, had her own brand of diva behavior that would drive video directors insane. 15. Lil Kim. Lil Kim, the Queen Bee, wasn't just a rapper, she was a fashion icon. Her colorful wigs and provocative outfits changed the game. She was a true artist, and her vision was everything. But that vision also made her a complete diva to work with, especially on music video sets. A Lil Kim video shoot was a massive, expensive event, and it almost never ran on time. Why? Because Kim would reportedly hold up production for hours over the smallest details. She would arrive late and then spend 8 to 10 hours in hair and makeup. Then she would come to the set, look at the lights, and decide she didn't like them. She would argue about the camera angles. She would demand outfit changes that weren't planned. This would cost the production tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtime for the crew. She was a perfectionist about her image, but her demands and her disregard for anyone else's time or budget earned her a reputation as a true diva. Lil Kim's perfectionism was all about her image, but our next star's perfectionism was all about the music, and it was just as exhausting for her team. 16. Missy Elliott. This one is different. You won't find stories of Missy Elliott being mean or throwing diva tantrums. By all accounts, she is a kind and generous person. So why is she on this list? Because her creative process is so intense, it's known to be absolutely exhausting for everyone involved. Missy is a true genius, and her brain works differently. When Missy Elliott and her producer, Timbaland, get in the studio, they lock in. They will reportedly work for 48 hours straight, without sleep, fueled by inspiration. They will create entire songs with complex beats and dozens of vocal layers in one marathon session. For the engineers and other writers on her team, it's a test of endurance. You are not allowed to be tired. You have to keep up with her. She is a perfectionist who will make you redo a single ad-lib 50 times until it has the exact bounce she wants. She's not difficult in a mean-spirited way, but working with her is a creative boot camp. If you can't hang, you're out. Missy's intensity is legendary, and her main collaborator, Timbaland, shares that same genius problem, making him just as difficult. 17. Timbaland. Timbaland is arguably the most important producer in R&B and hip-hop history. His unique, stuttering beats changed music forever. He created career-defining hits for Aaliyah, Genuine, Missy, Justin Timberlake, and countless others. But being a genius also makes him a control freak. When an artist works with Timbaland, they are in his world. He doesn't just make a beat. He crafts the entire song. This means he can be extremely difficult. He is known for scrapping entire albums worth of music. Artists might think they have a finished album, and Timbaland will come in, listen, and say, "This is all trash, start over." He's also known for demanding rewrites from songwriters. He has a specific rhythm in his head, and he needs the lyrics to match it perfectly. He will make artists re-record their vocals over and over, pushing them to their limit. He's not trying to be a jerk, he's just chasing a sound that only he can hear. But for the artists who just want to finish their song, it can be a deeply frustrating process. Tim Ballin's difficult nature comes from his intense focus. But our next artist is the exact opposite, and it's just as infuriating for collaborators. 18. Pharrell Williams. Wait, Pharrell, the happy guy? Everyone in the music industry says Pharrell Williams is the nicest, most humble, and most positive person you will ever meet. He's not a diva. He's not a tyrant. So why is he on this list? Because of one simple, maddening flaw. He is terrible with deadlines. Here's the secret. Pharrell is so laid back and so busy that he is famous among record executives for delivering his work late. An artist will be on a tight deadline to finish their album. The label will pay Pharrell a huge amount of money for a beat, and then they wait and wait and wait. He is known for delivering his beats and songs weeks and sometimes months after he was supposed to. This sends the entire album release into a panic. It costs labels a fortune in delays and rescheduling. He's not doing it to be difficult. He's just a creative guy who works at his own pace. But in a business built on deadlines, his laid-back style is secretly a nightmare for the people waiting on him. Pharrell's problem is being too laid back. But our next star has the opposite problem. He's too hands-on, to the point of micromanaging. 19. Ne-Yo is one of the most gifted songwriters of the last 20 years. He wrote Irreplaceable for Beyoncé, Take a Bow for Rihanna, and dozens of other smashes. His talent is undeniable. But here's the kicker. If you are a co-writer working with him, you might as well just get him coffee. Ne-Yo is known for being a total micromanager in the writing room. When he's in a session, he has the entire song mapped out in his head, from the first word to the last harmony. He's not really looking for collaboration. He's looking for an engineer to record his ideas. Other talented songwriters have gone into sessions with him, excited to work together, only to find that Ne-Yo overrules every idea they have. He will tell them exactly what to write and exactly how to sing it. It's his way or the highway. It's not that he's mean, but he has so much confidence in his own vision that he doesn't leave room for anyone else. For co-writers, it can be a frustrating experience to just sit and watch him write a hit without you. Ne-Yo's control is about the songwriting. But our final star's difficult behavior is about his volatile temper, which has become a toxic part of his career. 20. Chris Brown. Chris Brown was supposed to be the next Michael Jackson. He could sing, he could dance, and he had a string of #1 hits. He was the golden boy of R&B. But that all changed after his shocking and terrible 2009 public scandal, which involved a violent incident with his then-girlfriend, Rihanna. After that, the golden boy image was gone, and it was replaced by a new reputation, that of a volatile and angry man. This completely changed how people worked with him. His temper became a huge problem. There were reports of him throwing things and having violent outbursts on the sets of music videos. He famously got so angry during an interview at Good Morning America that he allegedly smashed a window in his dressing room. His behavior became toxic. Collaborators, brands, and producers became scared to work with him. They were walking on eggshells, afraid of setting off his short fuse. His talent is still there, but his toxic and difficult behavior has overshadowed his entire career.
1. Gregory Coleman. Many people are crazy about a specific 6-second drum solo from 1969. It comes from a song called Amen, Brother by a group called The Winstons. The man playing that incredible funky drum beat was Gregory Coleman. To put it mildly, that solo, known as the Amen break, became one of the most important pieces of recorded sound in history. It was sampled and used to build the foundation of hip-hop and drum and bass music. You have heard it in thousands of songs, from N.W.A. to The Prodigy. So, the guy who created this legendary piece of music must have become a millionaire, right? The tragic truth is the exact opposite. What many overlooked is that Coleman never saw a single penny in royalties for his creation. The song was a B-side, and no one thought much of it at the time. He was just a session musician who was paid a small fee for his time in the studio. As his drum beat was making other people rich, Coleman's life went in another direction. He struggled to find steady work as a musician. Eventually, he found himself without a home, living on the streets of Atlanta, Georgia. The man whose rhythm became the backbone of entire genres of music died broke and homeless in 2006. A British DJ eventually raised over $30,000 for Coleman's estate, but it was far too late for the man himself. From a drummer everyone has heard but almost no one knows, we move to a man who was one of the most famous entertainers in the world. A true superstar who could do it all, yet still ended up owing millions to the taxman. 2. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was a force of nature. He was a singer, a dancer, an actor, and a comedian. As a key member of the legendary Rat Pack alongside Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, he was the definition of cool. He recorded R&B hits, starred in movies, and was a headliner in Las Vegas for decades. The man was a whirlwind of talent and charisma, and he made a tremendous amount of money during his long career. But the thing nobody tells you is that Sammy had a big problem with spending. He was known for his incredible generosity, often giving lavish gifts and huge amounts of cash to friends, family, and even strangers. He also spent a fortune on his own lifestyle. Unfortunately, he wasn't paying close enough attention to his taxes. For years, he simply didn't pay what he owed to the government. When he passed away in 1990, the world was shocked to learn the truth. Sammy Davis Jr. was in debt to the IRS for over $5 million. That would be more than $11 million today. The debt was so large that his wife had to auction off nearly all of his personal belongings and memorabilia to help pay it down. The man known as Mr. Show Business left behind almost nothing but a massive bill. Sammy's debts came from the taxman. But the next musician's problems came from something much more basic: the heartbreaking inability to see a doctor when he got sick because he simply could not afford it. 3. David Williams. You might not know the name David Williams, but you absolutely know his guitar playing. He was one of the most in-demand session guitarists in the business. His funky rhythmic style was a key ingredient on some of the biggest hits of all time. He played on Michael Jackson's albums Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. He also backed up stars like Madonna, Stevie Nicks, and Aretha Franklin. He was the secret weapon behind countless R&B and soul classics. Session musicians like David are usually paid a flat fee for their work in the studio. They don't get the big royalty checks that the main artists do. While he made a decent living during his peak years, the money wasn't guaranteed to last forever. What many overlooked is that he, like many freelance musicians, did not have health insurance. In the mid-2000s, his health began to fail. He was suffering from high blood pressure, and in 2009, he had a major stroke. Without insurance, he couldn't afford the hospital treatments he desperately needed. His family and friends tried to raise money to help, but it wasn't enough. David Williams, the man whose guitar powered some of the world's greatest hits, passed away at the age of 58, a victim of a system that left him with no resources when he needed them most. Williams played for the biggest stars, but our next artist was one of the biggest stars in the world, a true prince of soul, whose life came to a heartbreaking end inside his own family home. 4. Marvin Gaye. When you think of classic R&B, the name Marvin Gaye is one of the first that comes to mind. He was the soulful voice behind Motown hits like I Heard It Through the Grapevine, What's Going On, and Let's Get It On. He was a musical genius, a handsome and charismatic performer who could write songs that made you dance and songs that made you think. He was, without a doubt, one of the most important artists of his generation. But behind that smooth voice was a man in deep turmoil. The thing nobody tells you is that Marvin Gaye spent years struggling with his own personal demons. He battled with serious substance abuse issues that cost him a fortune. He also went through 2 very expensive divorces that drained his finances. To make matters worse, he was in a constant battle with the IRS over unpaid taxes. By the early 1982, his financial situation was a complete disaster. He declared bankruptcy, and, to escape his debts, he moved to Europe for a few years. Even after a successful comeback with the hit song Sexual Healing, he was still broke. When he passed away tragically in 1984, his estate was found to be insolvent. This means he had more debts than assets. The Prince of Motown had no will, no life insurance, and no savings, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant music but a financial catastrophe. Marvin's troubles tore his family apart, but for the next legendary voice, her troubles followed her to the very end, leaving her with a shocking debt that was bigger than most people's lifetime earnings. 5. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston was known simply as The Voice, and for good reason. Her powerful, soaring vocals were a gift to the world, making her one of the best-selling artists of all time. Hits like I Will Always Love You and I Wanna Dance with Somebody turned her into a global icon. She sold over 200 million records worldwide, starred in hit movies like The Bodyguard, and earned a fortune that most people can only dream of. You see, for all her incredible success, Whitney was fighting a long and difficult battle with substance abuse. This struggle had a devastating impact not only on her amazing voice, but also on her finances. Her unhealthy habits were incredibly expensive to maintain. On top of that, as her reliability wavered, she started to lose out on high-paying gigs and endorsements. She was still spending money like a superstar, but the superstar income was no longer flowing in. When she tragically passed away in 2012, the world was stunned to learn the state of her finances. Reports claimed that Whitney Houston was not just broke. She was in massive debt. Some sources estimated that she owed as much as $20 million to her record label and other creditors. The woman who had once signed a $100 million contract had an estate that was worth less than her enormous debts. Whitney's voice was a global treasure, but our next singer's voice was one of the first to truly define the sounds of jazz and blues, yet she passed away with less money in her bank account than a single movie ticket costs today. 6. Billie Holiday. Lady Day, as she was known, was a true musical pioneer. Billie Holiday's voice was one of a kind. It was full of emotion, pain, and a deep, soulful beauty. She didn't have the powerful range of other singers, but she had a way of phrasing a lyric that was pure genius. Songs like Strange Fruit and God Bless the Child were not just hits, they were powerful social statements. She changed the art of singing forever, but her life was one of constant struggle. The thing nobody tells you is that from a young age, she faced incredible hardship. As an adult, she fell into a pattern of substance abuse that would follow her for the rest of her life. She also got into terrible, abusive relationships with men who took advantage of her and stole her money. To make matters worse, she was relentlessly targeted by government authorities for her personal habits. She earned a lot of money in her career, but it was quickly taken by managers, agents, and her own expensive lifestyle. When she was on her deathbed in a New York hospital in 1959, she was under arrest, with police guarding her room. After she passed away, the world learned the heartbreaking truth. Billie Holiday had just 70 cents in her bank account. All she had to her name was $750 in cash that was found strapped to her leg. Billie Holiday was a victim of her time, but our next artist became the biggest star on the entire planet, a true king of his genre, yet he was hiding a secret debt so massive it was almost beyond belief. 7. Michael Jackson. He was the king of pop, an artist whose R&B roots helped him become the most famous person on earth. Michael Jackson's album Thriller is the best-selling album of all time. His music, his dancing, and his electrifying stage presence changed pop culture forever. He earned hundreds of millions, possibly even billions, of dollars over his career. He owned a massive ranch called Neverland, filled with amusement park rides and a zoo. He seemed to have limitless wealth. But what many overlooked was his spending. To put it mildly, his lifestyle was extravagant. He spent fortunes on art, antiques, and charity. But there was another, darker side to his expenses. In his later years, Michael faced very serious and very public legal battles. These court cases cost him tens of millions of dollars in legal fees and settlements. At the same time, his income was not what it used to be. The massive stadium tours and record-breaking album sales were behind him. He was borrowing huge sums of money just to maintain his lifestyle and pay his bills. When he passed away in 2009, just before a planned comeback tour, it was revealed that Michael Jackson was in debt to the tune of around $500 million. His estate was initially insolvent, and it took years of careful management and new deals to finally get it back into the black. Michael's spending was the stuff of legend, but the next Queen of Soul's downfall came from a very different kind of struggle, one that left her depending on public assistance during her final days. 8. Etta James. Etta James was the definition of a powerhouse vocalist. Her voice was raw, gritty, and full of soul. She could belt out a rock and roll tune 1 minute and then break your heart with a bluesy ballad the next. Her signature song, At Last, has become one of the most iconic love songs ever recorded. She was a true legend, a Grammy winner, and a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But her life off stage was marked by chaos and struggle. For decades, Etta James fought a fierce battle with substance dependency. This fight not only took a toll on her health, but also on her finances. What many people don't know is that the money she made from her music often went straight to supporting her habits. She also had a reputation for being a difficult artist to work with, which sometimes cost her lucrative opportunities. In her later years, she faced serious health problems that required expensive, round-the-clock medical care. She had not saved enough money to cover these costs. The situation became so dire that the woman with the multi-million-dollar voice had to rely on Medicaid, a government program for those with low income, to pay for her care. When she died in 2012, her sons were fighting in court over control of her very small estate. Etta James had to rely on government help. But our next artist was the daughter of royalty, yet she too found herself in a desperate financial situation after fighting her own personal demons. 9. Natalie Cole. Natalie Cole was born into music royalty. Her father was the legendary Nat King Cole, one of the smoothest and most beloved singers of all time. But Natalie was a star in her own right. She burst onto the R&B scene in the 1,970 seconds, with hits like This Will Be an Everlasting Love and Our Love. She had a powerful voice and a commanding stage presence, winning multiple Grammy Awards. The thing nobody tells you is that with fame came immense pressure, and Natalie soon found herself in the grips of a severe addiction. Her personal struggles became very public and nearly destroyed her career and her life. During this dark period, she burned through the fortune she had earned. She later wrote in her autobiography that she spent huge amounts of money to support her habit, leaving her nearly penniless. She managed to make one of the most incredible comebacks in music history with her 1,991 album, Unforgettable, with Love, where she famously sang a duet with her late father's recorded voice. The album was a massive success and made her wealthy once again. However, the years of substance abuse had taken a toll on her health, and she faced expensive medical issues later in life, including a kidney transplant. While she was not destitute when she passed in 2015, the cost of her recovery from addiction and her later health battles had a significant impact on the fortune she had worked so hard to rebuild. Natalie Cole fought hard to regain her life and career, but our next artist, a trailblazing singer and actress, found her career sabotaged and her finances ruined by the very people who were supposed to help her. 10. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge was a true trailblazer. She was a stunningly beautiful and incredibly talented singer and actress. She started her career singing in clubs with an R&B and jazz style, but she is best remembered for her acting. In 1954, she became the first African-American woman to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in the movie Carmen Jones. She was a glamorous star who seemed destined for greatness. But in the Hollywood of the 1950 seconds, a black leading lady faced enormous obstacles. What many overlooked is that she was denied many roles because of her race. Her career began to stall. At the same time, her personal life was falling apart. She was the victim of terrible financial advice and abuse. Her managers and advisors mishandled her money, investing it in bad deals that lost her entire fortune. She was forced to declare bankruptcy and lost her beautiful Hollywood home. She tried to make a comeback, but the momentum was gone. In 1965, her life came to a tragic end. She passed away from what was ruled an accidental overdose of medication she was taking for a foot injury. When she died, Dorothy Dandridge, the woman who had once been on the cover of magazines and nominated for an Oscar, was completely broke. Dorothy's story is one of stolen potential, while our next artist was a beloved balladeer whose smooth voice hid his own private health and financial struggles that only came to light near the end. 11. Luther Vandross. When it came to romantic R&B ballads, Luther Vandross was the undisputed king. His voice was like velvet, smooth, rich, and full of emotion. For more than 2 decades, he created an incredible string of hits, including Here and Now, Power of Love, Divided by Love Power, and his famous cover of A House Is Not a Home. He sold over 40 million records and was a constant presence on the radio. He was the voice of love for a whole generation. Luther was a very private person. He rarely discussed his personal life or his health, but behind the scenes, he was dealing with serious health issues. He struggled with his weight for most of his life and had both diabetes and hypertension. These conditions are very expensive to manage over many years. In 2003, he suffered a major stroke that left him in a wheelchair and unable to sing again. The medical costs associated with his care for the last 2 years of his life were enormous. The thing nobody tells you is that while he was still a wealthy man by any normal standard, these hidden health costs and a very generous lifestyle meant that his estate was not as large as people expected. When he passed away in 2005, he left behind a modest estate, much of which was likely used to settle any remaining debts from his extensive medical care. Luther's health issues created hidden debts, but for our next artist, the Ivory Queen of Soul, her debts were much more public, stemming from battles with the very industry that made her a star. 12. Teena Marie. Teena Marie was a one-of-a-kind talent, a white singer who was so soulful that she was signed to the legendary Motown Records. She became known as the Ivory Queen of Soul. She was taken under the wing of funk legend Rick James, and together they created classic R&B hits. On her own, she scored major successes with songs like Lover Girl and Ooh La La La. She was a gifted singer, songwriter, and producer. But Teena was also a fighter. Early in her career, she got into a major legal battle with Motown. She wanted to leave the label, but they refused to release her or release her new music. The case went to court and resulted in a landmark ruling, often called the Teena Marie Law, which made it illegal for a record company to keep an artist under contract without putting out their albums. She won the legal fight. But what many overlooked is that these kinds of battles are incredibly expensive. This, combined with later career ups and downs and the costs of managing her health, left her in a difficult financial position. When she passed away suddenly in 2010, it was reported that she had unresolved debts. The woman who fought for artists' rights found herself another victim of the tough financial realities of the music business. Teena Marie fought the system, but our next artist, the son of another R&B legend, found his finances strained by legal issues of a more personal and familial nature. 13. Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert had R&B music in his blood. He was the son of Eddie Levert, the lead singer of the legendary group The O'Jays. Gerald first found fame as the lead singer of the group Levert, which had hits like Pop, Pop, Pop Goes My Mind. He then launched a very successful solo career, becoming known for his powerful, passionate voice on songs like Baby Hold On To Me and Private Line. He was a talented songwriter and producer, working with many other artists. He made a lot of money and was known for his generous spirit, often helping out friends and family. But that generosity sometimes led to problems. You see, his life was complicated by a series of lawsuits and personal disputes that were a constant drain on his finances. There were paternity suits and other legal entanglements that cost him a great deal of money in legal fees and settlements. These private battles, combined with a lifestyle that included supporting a large extended family, put a major strain on his resources. When he passed away in 2006 from an accidental overdose of prescribed and over-the-counter medications, he was still a major star, but his estate was reportedly facing significant financial strains that surprised many of his fans. Gerald Levert's life was cut short by a tragic accident. But our next artist made a heartbreaking choice after years of battling depression and the financial droughts that came with a stalled career. 14. Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman was a truly breathtaking performer. She was tall, elegant, and possessed a deep, powerful voice that could handle jazz, soul, and R&B with ease. She was a commanding presence on stage and in the studio. She is best known for hits like You Know How to Love Me and her stunning performance on the song Betcha by Golly Wow with Norman Connors. She was a critical darling and a beloved figure in the soul music community. But the thing nobody tells you is that for much of her life, Phyllis Hyman suffered from severe depression and bipolar disorder. This made the ups and downs of the music industry incredibly difficult for her to handle. When her career hit slow periods and the hit records weren't coming, it had a major impact on her mental health and her finances. She struggled to find consistent work that paid what she was worth. The financial pressure added to her emotional turmoil. She felt undervalued by the music industry and was frustrated by her lack of mainstream success. In 1995, after years of these private battles, she made a tragic and desperate final act. She ended her own life just hours before she was scheduled to perform at the Apollo Theater. In a note she left behind, she wrote, "I'm tired, I'm tired." Her passing revealed a story of an artist who was broken by a business that couldn't see her true value. Phyllis Hyman's story is one of deep emotional and financial pain. Our next artist was also a musical genius, whose mental health struggles contributed to his early and tragic end. 15. Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway was a musical genius. There is no other way to put it. His voice was pure, soulful, and incredibly expressive. He was a brilliant songwriter, a masterful keyboard player, and a gifted arranger. He gave the world timeless songs like A Song for You and The Ghetto. His duets with Roberta Flack, like Where Is the Love and The Closer I Get to You, are some of the greatest of all time. But what many overlooked was that Donny was fighting a serious battle with his mental health. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a condition that caused him to have severe bouts of depression and delusions. This made it very difficult for him to handle the pressures of fame and to work consistently. He had to be hospitalized several times. His treatments were expensive, and his inability to tour or record regularly meant his income was unpredictable. His finances suffered greatly as a result. In 1979, at the age of just 33, his life came to a shocking end. He was found on the ground below the 15th floor window of his New York hotel room. While his career was on an upswing at the time, his personal life was still in turmoil, and he left behind debts related to the high cost of his mental health care. Donny Hathaway's struggles were with his own mind, but our next singer faced a different kind of health battle. One that drained all her resources despite having one of the most famous songs of the 1970 seconds. 16. Minnie Riperton. Minnie Riperton had a voice that was truly an instrument. She was famous for her incredible 5-octave vocal range, which allowed her to hit stunningly high notes in what is known as the whistle register. Her 1975 hit song, Lovin' You, is a perfect showcase of this amazing talent. The song was a #1 hit all over the world and made her an international star, but just 1 year later, in 1976, she received a devastating diagnosis. She had breast cancer. At the time, the prognosis for this disease was not as hopeful as it is today. You see, Minnie was a fighter. She became one of the first celebrities to speak openly about her diagnosis, becoming a spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. She continued to record and tour, even while undergoing difficult and expensive treatments. In the 1970 seconds, health insurance was not always great, and the costs of fighting a major illness like cancer could quickly wipe out a person's savings. When she passed away in 1979, at the young age of 31, she had used up most of her fortune paying for her medical care. She left behind a legacy of beautiful music, but very little money. Minnie Riperton's fortune was lost to a health crisis. Our next artist, one half of a legendary Motown duo, also had her life and finances cut short by a tragic illness. 17. Tammy Terrell. Tammy Terrell was a rising star at Motown Records in the 1960 seconds. She was beautiful, vibrant, and had a voice that was sweet yet strong. She was a successful solo artist, but she became a true legend when she was paired with Marvin Gaye. Together, they recorded some of the most beloved duets in music history, including Ain't No Mountain High Enough and You're All I Need to Get By. They had incredible chemistry and were poised for even greater success, but their partnership was cut short by tragedy. In 1967, while performing on stage with Gaye, Tammy collapsed into his arms. Doctors discovered that she had a malignant brain tumor. For the next 3 years, she bravely endured multiple surgeries and treatments as she fought for her life. What many people don't know is that these medical procedures were incredibly expensive, and they completely drained her finances. Her illness left her unable to perform or record, so there was no money coming in. Motown reportedly helped with some of the bills, but it wasn't enough. When she passed away in 1970, at just 24 years old, Tammy Terrell had no estate to speak of. Her bright future was stolen by illness, which also took every dollar she had ever earned. Tammy Terrell was a teen star whose life ended too soon. Our next artist was also a teenage sensation, the original boy band leader, whose life took a dark turn that left him penniless. 18. Frankie Lymon. Long before the Jackson 5 or New Edition, there was Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers. In 1956, a 13-year-old Frankie Lymon became an overnight sensation with the smash hit Why Do Fools Fall in Love? His high, innocent voice and charming stage presence made him one of the first black teen idols. The group was a huge success, but it didn't last long. Frankie soon left the group for a solo career that never took off, but his biggest problem was a personal one. The thing nobody tells you is that at a very young age, he got involved with dangerous substances. By his late teens, he had a serious dependency problem that would control the rest of his short life. Any money he made was quickly spent. He tried to make several comebacks, but his personal issues always got in the way. He lost his home and was in and out of trouble. In 1968, at the age of 25, he was found in his grandmother's bathroom. his life tragically cut short by his long-standing addiction. The boy who had once been on top of the music world died with absolutely nothing. Frankie Lyman's solo career failed to launch, a fate that also befell our next artist, whose famous falsetto voice couldn't save him from obscurity after he left his legendary group. 19. Philippe Wynne. If you've ever listened to the classic 70-second soul group The Spinners, you have heard the magical falsetto voice of Philippe Wynne. You can spell his name Phil-Up Wynne. He was the lead singer on some of their biggest hits, like Could It Be I'm Falling in Love and The Rubber Band Man. His incredible vocal improvisations at the end of their songs, known as the Philippe, were his signature move. He was a dynamic and unforgettable frontman. In 1977, Wynne decided to leave the Spinners at the height of their fame to start a solo career. He believed he was destined for even bigger things on his own. Unfortunately, it was a huge miscalculation. His solo albums failed to sell, and he quickly faded from the public eye. What many overlooked is that without the fame of the Spinners, he struggled to find work. He ended up playing small clubs for very little money. The man who had once sung in front of thousands was now performing for just a handful of people. In 1984, while performing at a nightclub in Oakland, California, he suffered a massive heart attack on stage and passed away. The great voice of the Spinners died, broke, and in relative obscurity. 1. Frankie Lyman. Many people are crazy about the song Why Do Fools Fall in Love? It's a classic that sounds like pure joy and innocence. What many overlooked is the almost unbelievable story of the boy who sang it. Frankie Lyman was the lead singer of the Teenagers, and he was only 13 years old when that song became a massive international hit in 1956. Think about that for a second. At an age when most kids are worried about homework, Frankie was a global superstar. He was a pioneer, one of the very first black teen idols, with a powerful voice and amazing stage presence that captivated audiences everywhere. The thing nobody tells you is that the fame came too fast and was too much to handle. The group had a string of hits, but as Frankie's voice began to change with age, the magic started to fade. The music industry, which had built him up, quickly moved on to the next big thing. Frankie tried to launch a solo career, but he could never recapture that initial spark. He struggled for years, battling personal demons and trying to find his place in the world after being a superstar as a child. In 1968, at the shockingly young age of 25, Frankie Lyman's story came to a tragic end in the same New York neighborhood where he grew up. He was found in his grandmother's home, his incredible voice silenced forever. To lose a talent so young is a tragedy. But what happens when a star's life is cut short at the absolute peak of her powers while performing with one of music's biggest legends? 2. Tammy Terrell. When you hear the names Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell, you instantly think of some of the greatest duets ever recorded. Songs like Ain't No Mountain High Enough and You're All I Need to Get By are more than just songs. They are monuments of soul music. Tammy Terrell was the perfect musical partner for Marvin. She had a voice that was both powerful and sweet, and their chemistry was electric. They seemed destined to be a duo for the ages. But not all things are what they seem. Behind their joyful music, a heartbreaking drama was unfolding. In 1967, while performing on stage with Marvin in Virginia, Tammy suddenly collapsed into his arms. It was the first sign of a serious health issue. Doctors soon discovered a malignant tumor in her brain. To put it mildly, the diagnosis was devastating. For the next 3 years, she bravely endured multiple surgeries and treatments, all while trying to continue her recording career. The thing nobody tells you is that on some of her later recordings, she was in so much pain that her duet partner, Valerie Simpson, who also co-wrote the songs, secretly sang some of her parts to help finish the album. In 1970, after a long and courageous fight, Tammy Terrell passed away. She was only 24 years old, a brilliant star extinguished far too soon. Tammy was part of the Motown family, a label famous for its girl groups. But the story of one of the founding members of the biggest girl group of all time is perhaps the label's most tragic tale. 3. Florence Ballard. Everyone knows the Supremes. They were a global phenomenon, the most successful American vocal group in history, with 12 #1 hits. Most people remember Diana Ross as the lead singer and face of the group. What many have forgotten is that the Supremes started as a trio, and the group's original founder was a woman named Florence Ballard. In the beginning, Florence was considered the main singer, with a powerful, soulful voice that was stronger than Diana's. You see, as the group became more successful, Motown founder Berry Gordy decided to push Diana Ross to the front, giving her the lead vocals and renaming the group Diana Ross and the Supremes. Florence was pushed into the background. This decision caused a lot of tension within the group. Feeling sidelined and struggling with depression, Florence began to act out and was eventually fired from the very group she had started. It was a devastating blow. She tried to launch a solo career, but it never took off. She lost her fortune and ended up in a very difficult financial situation, a world away from the glamour of the Supremes. In 1976, just as she was starting to get her life back on track, Florence Ballard died suddenly from a cardiac event. She was only 32 years old, a cautionary tale of how cruel the music business can be. The pressures of fame can lead to heartbreaking ends. Our next artist was a musical genius, a writer and performer whose soulful voice could move anyone, but who fought a silent battle that ultimately consumed him. 4. Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway was a true musical prodigy. He was a brilliant songwriter, a gifted pianist, and a singer with a voice so rich and full of emotion it could make you cry. He wrote the Christmas classic, This Christmas, and recorded breathtaking duets with Roberta Flack, like Where Is the Love and The Closer I Get to You. He was a gentle giant of soul music, respected by everyone he worked with. His talent was immense, and his future seemed limitless. He had everything going for him. However, behind that incredible talent was a man engaged in a deep and painful struggle. Donny was diagnosed with serious mental health challenges that caused extreme mood swings and paranoia. This internal battle made it incredibly difficult for him to handle the pressures of the music industry. There were times he had to be hospitalized, and his career would stop and start. He was trying his best to manage his condition while creating some of the most beautiful music of the era. What many overlooked were the signs of his deep despair. In January 1979, Donny Hathaway's life came to a shocking end after he fell from the 15th floor window of his New York City hotel room. He was just 33 years old. The world lost a truly sensitive and brilliant soul. Donny Hathaway's voice was full of raw emotion. But our next artist had a voice that was something else entirely. A gift so unique it seemed almost superhuman. 5. Minnie Riperton. You know the song Lovin' You from 1975. It's a beautiful, gentle song famous for one incredible moment. A series of impossibly high notes that sound more like a bird than a human voice. The woman who could do that was Minnie Riperton. She possessed what is known as a 5-octave vocal range, an incredibly rare gift that allowed her to sing in the whistle register. She could produce notes so high they were almost beyond the range of human hearing. It was her signature, a true wow factor that made her stand out. But while she was hitting those angelic high notes and her career was soaring, Minnie was hiding a serious secret. In 1976, at the peak of her fame, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. The thing nobody tells you is that she was given only about 6 months to live. Instead of retreating from the public eye, she became one of the first celebrities to speak openly about her diagnosis, becoming a spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. She continued to tour and record music with incredible bravery and grace, even as her health declined. In 1979, just a few years after her biggest hit, Minnie Riperton passed away at the age of 31. She left behind a legacy of beautiful music and immense courage. Minnie's passing at 31 was a profound loss. But imagine the shock of an audience watching a beloved singer collapse and pass away right in front of their eyes. 6. Philip Wynne. The Spinners were one of the biggest soul groups of the 1970 seconds, with a string of hits like I'll Be Around, Could It Be I'm Falling in Love, and The Rubber Band Man. A huge part of their unique sound was the incredible lead singer, Philip Wynne. He had a mesmerizing tenor voice and was a master of ad-libs and vocal runs. He was a dynamic and captivating performer who poured every ounce of his energy into his live shows. He was the heart and soul of the group during their golden era. After leaving the Spinners for a solo career, he eventually found a new home as the lead singer for another group, Bootsy's Rubber Band. He continued to be a powerful force on stage, known for his intense performances. But in July 1984, something unthinkable happened. While performing at a nightclub in Oakland, California, in the middle of a song, Philip Wynne suffered a massive heart attack and collapsed on stage. The audience and his bandmates watched in horror as medical personnel rushed to help him, but it was too late. He passed away right there, at the age of 43, having spent his final moments doing what he loved most. It was a shocking and public end to a spectacular career. A sudden passing on stage is a terrible shock. The next artist on our list was a trailblazer who broke down barriers, only to be taken by a devastating illness that was sweeping the nation. 7. Sylvester. Long before artists felt free to be their true selves, there was Sylvester. Known as the Queen of Disco, Sylvester was a force of nature. With his powerful, soaring falsetto voice and his flamboyant, gender-bending style, he was an icon of the disco era and a hero in the gay community. His songs, You Make Me Feel, Mighty Real, and Dance Disco Heat were massive club anthems that defined an era of freedom and celebration. He was bold, unapologetic, and incredibly talented. What many overlooked was his tireless work as an activist. As a mysterious and frightening virus began to affect his community in the 1980 seconds, Sylvester used his fame to raise awareness and funds for research. The thing nobody tells you is that he knew the fight was personal. He was diagnosed with the virus himself, and as his health began to fail, he became even more open about his condition. A remarkably brave act at a time when there was so much fear and misinformation. He planned his own memorial service and made sure his music royalties would continue to support charities after he was gone. In 1988, Sylvester passed away from complications related to the virus. He was only 41, a true pioneer who sang for joy and fought for life. Sylvester's activism was heroic. Our next artist was another powerful voice who commanded the stage with her presence, but her story ended with a heartbreaking and deeply personal choice. 8. Phyllis Hyman. Phyllis Hyman was elegance personified. She was a stunningly beautiful woman, standing over 6 feet tall, with a deep, sultry voice that was pure class. She was a sophisticated soul and jazz singer who had a string of hits in the late 70 seconds and 80 seconds, including You Know How to Love Me and Living All Alone. She was also a talented actress, earning a Tony Award nomination for her work on Broadway in the musical Sophisticated Ladies. She had a loyal fan base that adored her incredible talent and regal stage presence. But behind that confident exterior was a woman struggling with deep emotional pain. For many years, Phyllis battled with bipolar disorder and depression, a struggle she often kept hidden from the public. To put it mildly, the music business can be a tough and lonely place, and for a sensitive artist like Phyllis, the ups and downs were difficult to bear. She poured all of her pain and passion into her music, but her personal battles were relentless. In 1995, just hours before she was scheduled to perform at the famous Apollo Theater in New York, Phyllis Hyman made the tragic choice to end her own life. She was only 45 years old, leaving behind a note for her fans and family, a final, sad farewell from a truly majestic voice. The loss of a great singer is one thing, but what about the loss of the man who created the very sound that made so many singers famous? 9. Bernard Edwards. You may not know the name Bernard Edwards, but you absolutely know his music. As the bassist and co-founder of the band Chic, He was one half of one of the most important production duos in music history, alongside his partner Nile Rodgers. Together, they invented the sound of sophisticated disco and funk. That iconic bass line in Good Times? That was Bernard. He also wrote and produced massive hits for other artists, like We Are Family for Sister Sledge and I'm Coming Out for Diana Ross. His influence is everywhere. In April 1996, Bernard was in Japan to perform a series of concerts celebrating the legacy of Chic. He was excited to be there, sharing the music he had created with fans on the other side of the world. After one of the shows in Tokyo, he went back to his hotel room, not feeling well. Tragically, he passed away in his sleep that night from a sudden and severe case of pneumonia. He was only 43 years old. The thing nobody tells you is that his partner, Nile Rodgers, found him the next day. Bernard Edwards was the quiet genius behind the groove, the man who created the soundtrack for a generation, and his sudden passing was a massive loss to the music world. Bernard's passing was sudden and unexpected. The next story is far more shocking, involving a musical innovator whose life was cut short by a dark and violent family conflict. 10. Roger Troutman. If you've ever heard a song with a funky, robotic-sounding voice, you've heard the work of Roger Troutman. He was the leader of the band Zapp and a true musical innovator. His signature was his masterful use of the talk box, an effects pedal that allowed him to make his voice sound like a synthesizer. He perfected this sound on hits like More Bounce to the Ounce and Computer Love. His unique style was a huge influence on funk, R&B, and West Coast hip-hop for decades to come. The story of his passing is one of the most shocking and tragic in music history. Roger and his older brother Larry had been in business together for years, but their relationship had become very strained. There were arguments over money and control of the band. On a Sunday morning in April 1999, in their hometown of Dayton, Ohio, this long, simmering feud exploded. A terrible and violent dispute between the two brothers ended with both of their lives being lost. Roger was found in his car a short distance from their recording studio, having been shot several times. Larry was found in his own car nearby with a single self-inflicted wound. Roger was only 47, an innovator silenced by an unthinkable family tragedy. That story is a dark chapter in music history. Our next artist came from an R&B royal family, but even that couldn't protect him from a tragically early end. 11. Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert was born into R&B greatness. His father, Eddie Levert, was the lead singer of the legendary group The O'Jays. Gerald followed in his father's footsteps, first as the lead singer of the group Levert, who had the huge hit Casanova, and then as a hugely successful solo artist. He had a powerful, gospel-inflected voice and a knack for writing soulful ballads. He was also part of the supergroup LSG. Alongside Keith Sweat and Johnny Gill, he was a constant presence on the R&B charts throughout the 90s and early 2000s. Gerald was known for his incredible work ethic, constantly writing, producing, and performing. But that demanding lifestyle may have taken a toll on his health. He suffered from anxiety and had been prescribed medication to deal with it, along with medication for pain from a shoulder injury. In November 2006, he was found unresponsive in his bed at his home in Cleveland, Ohio. An official report later revealed that his passing was the result of a fatal and accidental combination of prescribed and over-the-counter medications. He was only 40 years old, a prince of R&B taken far too soon, leaving a huge void in the world of soul music. Gerald Levert carried on a family legacy, but the next artist on our list broke barriers as a white artist who was fully embraced by the black music community, a true queen of soul. 12. Teena Marie. Teena Marie was a one-of-a-kind talent, a white singer-songwriter who was signed to the legendary Motown label in the 1970 seconds. She was a true R&B artist through and through. She was a protege of the funk legend Rick James, and together they created the classic duet Fire and Desire. But she was a star in her own right, with a powerful, soulful voice and incredible songwriting skills. She wrote and produced her own music, a rarity for female artists at the time. Hits like Lover Girl, Square Biz, and Ooh La 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 made her a beloved icon, earning her the nickname the Ivory Queen of Soul. She was a fiery and passionate performer who continued to make music and tour for her devoted fans for over 3 decades. Her career was a testament to her immense talent and her genuine love for the music. The thing nobody tells you is that she had been dealing with seizures in the last years of her life. In December 2010, the day after Christmas, Teena Marie was found by her daughter at her home in Pasadena, California. She had passed away in her sleep after suffering a grand mal seizure. She was only 54, and her sudden passing sent shockwaves through the R&B community, which had lost one of its most authentic and beloved voices. Teena Marie was a powerful female voice in R&B. The next artist was a gentle giant of the genre, a man whose upbeat energy and positive vibes made him a crossover star. 13. Heavy D. Heavy D, born Dwight Arrington Myers, was the overweight lover, the charismatic and good-humored frontman of the group Heavy D and the Boys. In the late 80 seconds and early 90 seconds, he created a unique blend of R&B, new jack swing, and hip-hop. With massive hits like Now That We Found Love and Is It Good to You, he brought a smooth, positive energy to the charts. He was known for his impressive dance moves despite his large size, and his music was all about fun, love, and respect. He was a truly beloved figure in the industry. After his group's success, he went on to have a successful acting career, appearing in movies and television shows. He also became a respected record executive, helping to guide the careers of other artists. He seemed to have made a perfect transition from performer to businessman. But in November 2011, after returning to his Beverly Hills home from a shopping trip, he suddenly had trouble breathing. He collapsed on a walkway and was rushed to the hospital. But it was too late. An official report found that he had passed away from a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in his lung. He was only 44 years old, and the sudden loss of this gentle giant left a huge hole in the hearts of his fans. Heavy D's loss was a shock. The next story is even more heartbreaking, involving a young artist from a popular girl group whose life ended in a sudden, tragic accident. 14. Natina Reed. In the late 1990 seconds, the girl group Block stormed the R&B and pop charts. The trio, mentored by Lisa Left Eye Lopes of TLC, had a string of hits, including 808 and Bring It All to Me. The rapper and songwriter of the group was Natina Reed. She was the fiery, energetic spark plug of the group, known for her bold lyrics and charismatic personality. She also had success as an actress, appearing in the hit cheerleading movie Bring It On. Blake was poised for long-term success, a fresh new voice in the world of R&B. But, you see, the group's momentum slowed in the early 2000s, and they eventually went their separate ways. Natina took time away from the spotlight to focus on her family and personal life, though she was reportedly working on new music and a group reunion. Her story took a devastating turn in October 2012, just 2 days before her 33rd birthday. While walking across a highway late at night in a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, she was struck by a car. It was a terrible and tragic accident that cut her life short. Her passing was a shock to fans who remembered her vibrant energy and hoped for a comeback from the talented artist. So many of these stories are about artists taken too young. But in the last year, the R&B world has quietly lost a whole generation of its founding fathers and mothers. Legends whose names you might not have heard in a while. 15. Brenton Wood. Let's talk about a classic. The song, the Oogum Boogum Song from 1967, is pure feel-good soul music. The man behind that quirky and unforgettable hit was Brenton Wood. With his smooth, sweet voice and his dapper style, Brenton Wood carved out a special place for himself in the world of R&B. He had another huge hit with the romantic ballad Gimme Little Sign. His music had a timeless, laid-back charm that made him a favorite on oldies radio stations and a beloved figure in the lowrider and soul music communities for decades. Unlike many artists from his era, Brenton Wood never stopped performing. He continued to tour and connect with his dedicated fans well into his 80 seconds, his voice still as smooth as ever. He was a true gentleman of soul, a living link to a golden era of music. What many overlooked was just how long he had been sharing his gift with the world. In early 2025, after a long and incredible life dedicated to music, Brenton Wood passed away from natural causes at the age of 83. His passing marked the quiet end of an era for a true soul original. Brenton Wood was a solo artist with a unique style. The next legend we lost was one half of arguably the most electrifying duo in the history of soul music. 16. Sam Moore. When you think of high-energy, sweat-drenched, pure soul music, you have to think of Sam and Dave, and the voice that powered that duo was the legendary Sam Moore. Known as the Double Dynamite Duo, their live shows were the stuff of legend. With classic hits like Hold On, I'm Comin', I Thank You, and the immortal anthem Soul Man, they defined the Stax Records sound. Sam's raw, powerful, gospel-trained voice was the engine of the group. He was the original soul man. After the duo split, Sam continued on a long and celebrated solo career. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and was recognized as one of the greatest singers of all time. He was a tireless performer and an ambassador for soul music, collaborating with countless artists over the years. The thing nobody tells you is that this icon of soul music was still with us until very recently. In the summer of 2025, at the age of 89, the legendary Sam Moore passed away peacefully, following complications from a recent surgery. The world lost one of its most powerful and influential voices, the man who taught everyone what it meant to be a soul man. Sam Moore was all fire and energy, but the next R&B icon we lost was known for his smooth, cool demeanor, earning him one of the best nicknames in music. 17. Jerry Butler. They called him the Iceman. Jerry Butler earned that nickname for his cool, calm, and sophisticated stage presence and his incredibly smooth baritone voice. His career started back in the 1950 seconds as the original lead singer of the influential vocal group The Impressions. He wrote and sang lead on their very first hit, the hauntingly beautiful ballad For Your Precious Love. That song is considered one of the cornerstones of soul music. After leaving The Impressions, he launched a hugely successful solo career that lasted for decades. He had massive hits like Only the Strong Survive and the duet Ain't Understanding Mellow. What many overlooked is his life after his music career. He became a respected politician in his home city of Chicago, serving as a Cook County Commissioner for over 30 years. He dedicated his life to public service after his time in the spotlight. In 2025, after a long battle with Parkinson's disease, the legendary Iceman, Jerry Butler, passed away at the age of 85. He was a true pioneer of soul music and a dedicated public servant. From the Iceman to a queen of funk, our next artist created a song so infectious it has been a party starter for nearly 50 years. 18. Gwen McCrae. If you've ever been to a party or a wedding, you have definitely danced to the song Rockin' Chair. It's an absolute funk and R&B classic with a groove that is impossible to resist. The powerful, soulful voice behind that timeless hit belonged to Gwen McCrae. Though she was often considered a one-hit wonder by the mainstream, she was a true icon in the world of soul, funk, and disco music. She had a long career with many other beloved songs that were huge hits in clubs and on R&B radio. Her music was especially popular in Europe, and she was a favorite artist for DJs to sample, meaning her voice has lived on through countless hip-hop and dance tracks. She was a powerhouse singer, with a voice that could be both gritty and sweet. After a career that spanned decades and brought joy to dance floors around the world, Gwen McCrae passed away in 2025 at the age of 81. Her passing was a quiet one, but it was a great loss for all the fans of pure, feel-good funk music. Gwen McCrae gave us a funk classic, but our next star was part of a group that created one of the most iconic romantic ballads of all time, a song that defined an entire era of doo-wop. 19. Tommy Hunt. Let's go back to 1959. A song comes on the radio that sounds like it's from another world. It's dreamy, romantic, and utterly magical. That song was I Only Have Eyes for You, and the group that sang it was the Flamingos. The beautiful, soaring lead vocal on that timeless classic belonged to Tommy Hunt. That song has been called one of the greatest recordings of all time. A perfect moment in music history. The Flamingos were one of the most elegant and polished vocal groups of their time, and Tommy Hunt was their star tenor. But not all things are what they seem. After leaving the group, Tommy had a difficult time in the music business in America. So, he made a bold move. He relocated to England in the 1972 and became a massive star in the UK's Northern Soul scene, a subculture that celebrated rare American R&B records. He had a whole second career and was beloved by a new generation of fans overseas. In 2025, after a long and fascinating life in music on both sides of the Atlantic, Tommy Hunt passed away at the age of 86. He left behind a legacy as the voice of one of the most perfect love songs ever made. Tommy Hunt was a voice from soul music's past. Our final artist was a key member of a band that gave us one of the most beloved wedding songs of the 1980s. 20. Wayne Lewis. Every wedding, every anniversary, every school dance in the 80 seconds and 90 seconds had one song on the playlist. Always by Atlantic Starr. It is one of the most iconic romantic duets of its generation. A timeless ballad about everlasting love. Atlantic Starr was a huge R&B band with a string of hits, but Always was their masterpiece. One of the co-founders and key members of that band was the multi-talented Wayne Lewis. He was a keyboardist, a vocalist, and a leader of the band through all of its biggest successes. Atlantic Starr was a true family band, originally formed by Wayne and his two brothers. They created a smooth, polished R&B sound that defined an era. After the height of their fame, the band continued to tour and perform for decades, bringing their classic love songs to audiences all over the world. The thing nobody tells you is that these legacy bands often continue to work tirelessly long after they've left the pop charts. In the fall of 2025, it was announced that the co-founder of the group behind Always, Wayne Lewis, had passed away at the age of 68, leaving behind a legacy of music that will forever be a part of people's most cherished memories.